First item on the agenda is acknowledgement of receipt of correspondence. Helene, did we get any correspondence?
I do not. I have to check, but I don't think so. I thought we did not. So I will say no.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. At this time, we will allow public comments for items that are not on the agenda with a limited time. Does anybody from the public wish to speak? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the Chabaco Road easement review. An opinion from the planning board regarding the project is needed prior to the November 15th town fall meeting. And with us tonight is Brad Mustaine from Woodard and Curran, the engineer on the project. And Brad, I do have the slides if you wanted me to present, or are you going to just speak? Do you need the slides or not?
We can put the slides up, I guess. We can speak from that, or I could share it as well.
Okay, I can make you co-hosts. Hold on.
Ron, are we going to, we've already seen a presentation, I believe, on the nature of this subject. Are we going to not have a presentation now, but just some images?
I think there's like 8 slides. I don't think we've had a presentation on this.
I know I've attended 2. Maybe it was the Board of Selectmen.
It wasn't the planning board.
Okay. Yeah, we've done this presentation a few times, so I wouldn't be surprised if a few of you have seen it out there. Can we see my screen yet at all?
Yeah, you're on, Brett.
Okay, so we're talking about the Chewbacca Road infrastructure improvement projects. With here, I believe we got Tim Olson, the Director of Public Works with Hamilton DPW, and I'm Brad Mustaine, Technical Manager at Woodard and Curran. I think most of y'all are familiar with this, so I'll try and be brief as I go through it. I don't want to bore you too much, but I'm going to briefly go over the project, its current status, why we're here, where we're relocating the road, and talk about the next steps, and then you can ask some questions. Now, the goals of this project were mostly to improve the condition of the existing roadway out there. It's a lot of loose gravel, and the pavement sections that are there aren't in that great a shape. We wanted to improve the safety for vehicles, but importantly, keep the country road feel out there. We didn't want to put in a bunch of curbing and urban infrastructure. We wanted to limit the impacts to woods and any native species out there, reduce sediment runoff from the gravel road into gravelly pond, and improve the stormwater management where possible, where we had room. Now, our project starts way over here at Essex Street. It's going to start with mostly a mill and repave, and it's going to end over here right past the landfill at the Manchester by the Sea town line. And we're doing almost 2 miles of roadway we're putting in there. Now, the first about 7,300 feet is just a mill and overlay job. We're going out there just scraping off the existing asphalt and giving us a new surface. After that, we have the section of the road we're relocating, and then we are doing a full depth reconstruction on the existing gravel road through the end section. This section right here, where the end of mill and overlay, is where we're relocating the road and proposing to put it on Manchester by the Sea property. We are also replacing a couple retaining walls along the road that are just falling out. We had longer versions of that one, but we've gone with a smaller impact, and we're just doing a 20-foot section and a 40-foot section. Now, big reason why we're here today is our where we're moving the road. The red here is the existing layout of the road. It goes right down close to gravelly pond and with the gravel surface. So getting a lot of washout in there. So it ends up with a lot of the gravel road and the gravelly pond. There's also a 1964 right of way that's in yellow that they made well, in 1964, but they never moved the road there. I think a lot of it was objections of the homeowners in the area. And then there's a lot of exposed rock ledge in that area we're trying to avoid as well. And that is what the green line where we're proposing to put the road seeks to mitigate, is seeks to miss the ledge that's out there and give a little bit of cushion in between the existing houses and where we're going to put the road. Now, where we're at right now, we have an order of conditions from the town of Hamilton. We met with the Board of Selectmen on March 1st. I guess that's where we saw the presentation before. And let's see, we sent the ENF to MIPA on June 20th, and we've gotten approval from MIPA in March. Hamilton, Woodard, and Kern, we're in the process of finalizing the design plans and specs. We're meeting with met with the Hamilton public on April 29th. And town of Hamilton, we got approval with them on May 1st. Now, the existing gravel roadway is located within a conservation restriction area. And the proposed land transfer between the Hamilton is covered under Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution. So we're going to need the support of this board to be able to move forward under Article 97 guidelines. As we saw, there's a couple right-of-ways over there right now. The one, the existing road, and when we're putting the 1964 right-of-way. And obviously, we've chosen neither of those, so we're going to put it in a new location. And I think that's most of the project. I think you guys are mostly familiar with what we're doing out here. We're going to transfer to the town of Manchester by the Sea 44,726 of the 64 right away, the existing right away at 31,000, and we're asking for 33,530 for the new right away, giving you a total of 42,000, almost 500. I guess new real estate to be to Manchester by the Sea. The next steps are to draft the Article 97 documents. More town meetings where you probably get to hear this presentation a few more times. Draft the legislation and anticipated bid, hopefully in the next few weeks. And construction, hopefully August to December time period of this year. Something tells me we're probably not going to start in August. Do I have any questions? I know I went fast, but I think this is a subject most of you guys are familiar with.
Any questions from the board?
Ron, can you hear me? Am I muted? I'm good. Ron, this is Christine.
Yeah, Christina, go ahead.
So I've actually been following this, and I am pretty familiar with this. So I guess the bottom line, and this has been my question when I've been looking for some documentation. Manchester purchased this land, and it's in this conservation restriction to protect Gravelly Pond. So I guess I would like some documentation, something saying that this road being moved is going to, bottom line, protect Gravelly Pond. I understand that Hamilton would like this road paved, but we did purchase it to protect the pond. So I'm just not seeing all the facts at this point. So there's a lot of documenting where is required is stormwater plan. There needs to be
Christina, your phone, something's,
Can't hear it.
you're breaking up.
So this is why I don't share my camera. Hold on a second. So let me see if I stop sharing my camera. So I've actually done a bit of research on this project, and I pulled up the NOI. Manchester is not listed as the owner on the NOI. With that, the terms of conditions, the owner of the property is responsible for best practices. We are the owners. So I'm not seeing that documentation. I'm not saying that I'm not aware of this. I just need to see some more, maybe some procedures followed. The Chabaco Road is a scenic road. I don't see where the Hamilton Planning Board has addressed the tree issue. I mean, this property was purchased to protect the road. If this road is paved, in my opinion, that would create increased traffic. Increased traffic does not, in my opinion, protect Gravelly Pond. I need a little more, I don't know, for better words, being sold on this. Right now, to me, low traffic on a gravel road, I mean, maybe does not encourage that road to be used as a thoroughfare. We're talking about black earth right there. We're talking about a potential 50 units on the other side. This is a high recreation road. I mean, a paved road, more trailers with boats. Bottom line, I'm just interested in what's in the best interest for our major supply of drinking water. So I understand that this might be a great and important thing for Hamilton, but is it the best thing for Gravelly Pond is my question. And maybe that we need to use some 53G money and make sure that it is. I mean, I know that Hamilton has done this work, but I mean, is the planning board happy with what's been done? The order of conditions is very minimal. We haven't heard from our conservation commission on this. I just feel like there's some steps that we need to maybe pause and back up and take a look at this. Once this road is paved, we can't go back.
Right. So can I answer that? Tim Olson, DPW director. You know, we're here, Brad and I are here tonight to obviously answer your questions. You know, this is a project that the town of Hamilton voted pretty much unanimously at town meeting, gave the town about $1 million to do this project. So it's pretty, you know, in Hamilton's mind and in the residents' mind, it's a pretty important project to get to see through. Obviously, there's 2 towns involved. You know, we can definitely, you know, we have some time now that we have, you know, to come before you as well as wait for the town meeting, I believe the fall for Manchester. We have some time to go through this. I know the next steps with Woodard and Curran are looking at the Article 97, but also the stormwater plan. Since we're impacting over an acre of property, we have to do a whole full stormwater impact study, stormwater management plan, I believe it is. Brad, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so that's coming. We want to make sure that we have the go-ahead before, in my opinion, before Hamilton spends more money with our engineer. If this is not going to be supported by Manchester, you know, we want to cut ties. We want to make sure that we're not spending money that's not going to be for an improved project in the end. So we have some time on this. You know, if you know, I did send I can send some information over. We do have the NOI. We do have a stormwater excerpt from that. You know, whatever Manchester would like to see, we are more than willing to comply and get you that information. So, like I said, some of that information is yet to be, yet to happen. We wanted to make sure that, like I said, we want to make sure that we are going forward and both communities are in support of this project. I can tell you that right now, the majority of the problem that we have out there, and today we just regraded the roadway, finally dried out enough for us to do the work, is erosion and sediment control, and that erosion and sediment falling into Gravelly Pond. It's so close to that pond side, anything, and that's where the water is trying to get to. Large rainstorms that we've had over the last month have contributed to a lot of erosion and sediment loss. We had to put in, and I can get you the material cost, but I know we had to put in considerable amount of material on that road today to get that to grade, to get it safe for traffic. My point is, in this whole thing is, if we can pave the roadway, it's a permanent fix. We are also, part of this is we have to adhere to all the sediment or stormwater controls. So with the paving of the project also comes with stormwater features. We are planning to put a swale on the side of the roadway, as well as on both low points, detention facilities or drainage facilities. So to capture the water prior to it going into Gravelly Pond. So we would percolate into the soil and eventually migrate to the pond instead of just going overland flow from the gravel pond or gravel road today into the pond. So we are creating stormwater BMPs that are not there today. Yes, it's a paved road. Yes, there may be traffic, but I think the biggest concern to Manchester's water source is the amount of sediment that's actually getting into the pond today. So bringing that landward, another 300 plus feet, I believe it is, we are gaining that space. We are also planning to take the portion of roadway that we are clearing. We are looking to reestablish the forest on the existing gravel part of the roadway. So we are scarifying the gravel roadway and then dressing that area with the topsoil and all the seeds and vegetation that we remove from where the new road will be. We're bringing that over to that area to reestablish the forest, native species, as best we can there. You know, that's the whole, we're shifting the road landward away from the pond to give time for detention, time for stormwater percolation, to water quality, let nature do its thing. By the time it gets from where the road is going to be to where it gets to the pond, it's got some time to you know, to filter out a lot of that sediment. And we have those features to capture it that are not there today. So I don't disagree with you. I think we have some work to do going in front of a couple of these. If we need to go in front of the Manchester's Concom, we'd be happy to do so. Obviously, the committees and boards in Hamilton, they're well aware of the project. We just wanted to make sure, like I said earlier, we want to make sure that we're going down the right road and getting both towns involved, getting opinions and questions and comments before, and hopefully gain approval before we, as Hamilton, go out and spend additional money to get this project put together.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
I do, Ron.
Yes, go ahead, Gary.
I think Christine made some good points. I think those are issues, but I also think you've satisfied them pretty well in your explanation, Tim. Those are relevant points, but I think it's a net gain for Gravelly Pond. It's sort of intuitively so by looking at the plans, but when you talk about putting swales in and having a detention system and then more forest in between the road and the pond, that's like as kind of as good as it can get. You will have more traffic, but I don't think it's going to have an environmental impact. So those are good questions, but I think you have some good answers. I don't know about the town administration. Are they requesting you go before the Concom as a courtesy anyhow? Because that seems, may not be regulatory requirement, but it would seem the right thing to do. But I wouldn't wait, personally, I wouldn't wait to vote on this until I heard something from the Concom. I'm ready to vote on this.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to satisfy everybody's questions, and if there are people, maybe some of those Concom members were on some of the Board of Selectmen meetings. Maybe they are aware of the project. We, you know, obviously we're abutters. We want to, you know, work together on this. It's kind of a strange situation that we have here. We don't see this every day, but obviously there's a net gain to Manchester with the conservation land. I think Brad said about 42,000 square feet gaining back to Manchester.
Any other comments from the board?
I have a couple questions.
Sarah?
Clarify for me if you could just, what is the motivation for Hamilton to want to do this? What's motivating you? Besides, I can understand repairing the structures. Is it to be able to pave it so that you reduce your costs, or it's better for residents, or what's the motivation?
I think all of that. I mean, it's a road. Obviously, I'm biased, DPW director, where we've got guys out there, tremendous amount of time to, you know, it's a public roadway that's gravel. There's not many of those. We have 3 in town, but, you know, you look at other towns, they don't have a lot of public gravel roadways. A lot of them are built to a town standard, city standard. We have constant issues with you know, potholes, maintenance work. There's expense to that. We do have our landfill out there that we open to residents during, you know, brush days. But a lot of the reason why we don't open it more is because of the condition of the roadway. We've also had public safety issues. We have full support from our public safety divisions for response units. The mail office, post office has an occasion, or maybe before my time, but I know during my time, threatened not to deliver mail because of the way the road is. Bus service, we have full support from some of the residents out there because of bus service. They don't go down the gravel road because of the condition, so they're forced to bring their kids down further towards I believe they pick up at the boat ramp. You know, a lot of that, I mean, my job is obviously to get these roads put together and keep them in good shape. And the last thing I need on my conscience is a road that's not, and, you know, they can't get to a certain person. And, you know, there's some, you know, I take pride in that to make sure that that road's in good shape. And, you know, the amount of rain that we've gotten, if it's wet and muddy, we can't work the road, we can't grade it. It would turn into a sloppy mess that we can't, it actually would be more detrimental. So, you know, recreational, there is quite a bit of traffic that, you know, from Hamilton or maybe from somewhere else that likes to use the boat ramp and Chabaco Lake there. Chabaco Woods is on this. So we are looking to do part of this job is making new some additional road shoulders for additional parking because we've had parking issues. The road, as you can see in some of these pictures, is not in great shape. Some of the areas that we're looking to do a mill and overlay. We are looking to do a consistent width throughout the whole way. So it does create a country feel with some contour and curves to keep the traffic down with additional signage. We do also have some, you know, quite a bit of, we're looking to do some more crosswalks because we have people coming in, you know, across where Chabaco Woods is and where Beck's Pond is. So there's a lot of recreation out here, not just public safety, but recreation that we are looking to try to, you know, there's a reason why the road looks the way it does, even in the paved section. There's a lot of traffic that goes through there because people like to use Chabaco. That's a beautiful spot for some people. And I'm looking at it just to make the road safe, a town standard. Yes, it does reduce our maintenance costs. At the same time, it provides, you know, public safety. You know, a road for them to be able to access, like I said, bus service, things like that. So we have a lot of support from the abutters. I've been talking with them periodically.
Tim, can I interrupt?
Sure.
I think
Yep.
I think that answers Sarah's question.
Right. Yep.
I don't think we need to hear, you know,
Yep.
any other questions from the board?
I've been on this for about 2 years now, so.
Can I ask another question, Ron?
Yes, Sarah.
Sorry. Well, first of all, I understand the gravel road issues. I happen to have had a lot of experience with gravel roads at one point in my career. But anyway, and I appreciate the additional, I think moving this road away from Gravelly Pond, it does have the benefits that to Gravelly Pond. So the question is, if we don't approve this, would you use the existing red line road? Or is there some reason that, I mean, are you going to do it anyway using that existing red? Or, well, I guess in this picture it's green.
Well, we would like to get approval, of course. It would be a little silly to not do this part and do the before and after, which is, you know, fully in the right of way in town of Hamilton property. You know, I think the benefits outweigh the.
No, I understand the benefits. I'm just trying to see if we don't give our blessing and it's going to happen anyways, then it seems to make sense, kind of a no-brainer, that we would give our blessing to have a better outcome, is what I'm trying to get to. But because if we don't give our blessing and you can go ahead and do the road on the existing footprint, then for sure we should move ahead with the improved location, is my point.
Yeah. And
So-
I don't have an answer for you, if I can force the hand or not. I didn't want to do that. So I don't have an answer for you tonight on that.
I'm not asking you to blackmail us or anything. I'm just trying to point out to our colleagues that if we don't go ahead, then we're going to get something worse than the plan as it is, as they're asking us to approve, I think.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to endorse?
Ron, this is Mary. I have a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Could you tell us how much land clearing you would need to do on the Manchester conservation land for the road?
It looks like on the plan about 33,000 square feet.
So do you, I mean, that looks like a densely wooded area. How, you know, is that
We-
taking down all those trees?
Well, there are trees that would have to come down, but part of our alignment that we have here is to try to minimize the amount of trees.
So, okay. And I mean, I have to agree with the questions that Christine were asking. I think it would be good if we could understand our Concom's viewpoint on this. Maybe the Chabaco Woods Committee of the two towns, if we could hear from them what they have to say. Obviously, there's proposed development on and off at Gordon College, which is right near there, and on Essex Road in Hamilton. And so this would be more highly trafficked. So I think it's good to understand, with this Gravelly Pond being one of our main drinking water supply sources, to have some of those further documentations and conversations.
And any other comments from the board?
So Ron, I have a comment on what Sarah's proposal was. This has to go in front of the DEP. And in my opinion, I'm not the DEP, they would not propose paving on that green line because of the wetlands. And I mean, there's another question. I've heard rumors and I'm just gonna ask them. So has there been conversations, Tim, between Manchester and Hamilton to lay water pipes along this new road that would come from, or a source of coming from Gravelly Pond or the adjacent pond?
So there's always talk, alternative water sources, with Hamilton. We are in the Ipswich River basin. Manchester's in North Coastal. I think a long time ago, there was talk that Hamilton would come up and connect to the water plant. I believe there's even a tap in there, some type of, is what I've been told, is some type of hookup for Hamilton. So maybe that was planned back in the day, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. It's not something on my near future. It's not something, out of our alternatives, our water source alternatives, it's not first. It's down on the list. So there is a bit of time that we're not going to be building this road and then next year coming out and doing the water main. So that's why we're going forward with the paving now, because we know it's a long-term. If that is the case, that would be a long-term solution, long-term planning. So not at this time. It's something that we've talked about. I think both towns have talked about it over the years, but we don't have any plans at this time to move forward with that.
Okay. I'd like to hear a motion on this, whether to endorse this project.
I move to endorse the project, Ron.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Ron, this is Mary, I would just say I don't feel like we have enough information yet.
Okay, any other discussion?
Ron, the NOI does not have Manchester listed as the owner. I mean, this is so premature. For us to vote on this would be, in my opinion, unwise. And
So there's a
we're
motion
here
on
to
the
do a check.
The motion is, okay, any further discussion?
I'm sorry.
I'll take a roll call. I'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
No.
Ms. Foley,
No,
Mr. Gilbert,
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Olney,
yes,
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-2, 4-2. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks. Okay, next item. Blasting article process guidelines. Greg was, there was a question at our last meeting about blasting procedure. I think Gary had the question. Greg is not here, unfortunately, tonight to explain it, but he did send an email to all of us tonight to explain it a bit. I'll just read it for the record. The amendment to the earth removal bylaw voters approved at the June annual town meeting. The bylaw calls for the development of blasting guidelines that the planning board will use in reviewing projects for blasting. He recommends a small working committee be formed, and I agree, to work with the fire chief Cleary on the development of the guidelines. So he believes we should adopt the state regs as our guidelines, plus with a few additions that we may want to add, and that could possibly be banning certain chemicals as blasting agents and possibly larger monitoring radius. So I think what I'll do when we meet as a full board in August is form that subcommittee, and we'll take it from there. Any further discussion on that? I just, with Greg not here, I mean, I think that's where we want to go.
Ron, I just wanted to get some clarification. Like I mentioned last time, I don't understand. This is not really our bailiwick. It's like to me, it's like the fire department and the DPW have more expertise on it. They should get together and make recommendations, it seems to me anyhow, to Greg / the Board of Selectmen. Because what do we know about this? It's not really land use regulation in a sense, but I could be wrong, and it could be a normal thing that planning boards regulate.
I understand your concerns, and that's why I wanted Greg to explain that. Sue, do you have any further information on that?
I would just say that it's not something that we really have a choice on, because it was a town meeting vote for the planning board to make these regulations. We can debate whether we think we should be, but I think if we think that, just as we are asking the fire chief to be on that committee, if we think that anyone on the DPW has anything to add, we could add them. But I think we're mandated to write those, to propose those regulations and get them into our regulations.
Okay, any other comments? I can move on. All right, the next item is a 10 Forest Lane A&R, and is Mr. Collins here to explain, or a representative?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Collins, yeah, there you are. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for considering our application for A&R. My wife and I bought 10 Forest Lane 6 years ago. It is represented in the Assessor's Map 37, Lot 19. It is 1.72 acres and is separated in two grades. There's kind of like an upper level of the lot and a lower level. And in May, the zoning board approved our application for variance to split the lot, thus creating a new buildable lot, which is half of an acre, fully conforming, and then a second lot, which where our existing house and garage and shed are. We did include in our application our surveyor's site plan showing lot 1, which is where our existing house is, and lot 2, which would become a new half-acre lot. This, the zoning board, as I said, unanimously approved, and they've filed their approval. We're in front of you for an A&R. We'll be back next month for an application for the new driveway and curb cut. We kind of didn't have time to get all our eggs in a row. So we'll have to come back next month. I apologize for that application. But in any event, I haven't been in this process. I don't know. Are there any questions or any information that we did not include? We did request the input from the planning board and the ZBA regarding the information we needed to include in the site plan. So hopefully
Well, yeah, we had, I had Gary Gilbert vet this. Gary, would you want to make any comments on what you found?
It's another one of those A&Rs where we have no legal right to really say anything about it. These are legally created lots. The zoning board of appeals gave them a variance for not having adequate frontage on one of the lots. But our determination really is the way that services these lots adequate, and it obviously is. The street is, it's been around a long time. They have access to the lot. There's not much more we have to say about it. So I recommend that we just endorse this plan.
Sue, any other additional comments?
I do not have any additional comments.
Okay. Any further, is there a motion then?
I do have a quick question. Is the plan
Okay.
stamped?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it online, so it's a little hard to tell. Oh, yeah. it's- okay,
The paper copy I have, Sarah, is stamped in the left side by Kirk
I see that.
Benson.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take a motion to endorse the plan for 10 Forest Lane as approval not required.
I'll second that
A&R.
motion.
Okay, it's A&R 822. We want to enter that into your,
Yes. As amended, 820.
okay.
I'll still
A
second. it.
motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Take a roll call vote. Ms. Creighton,
Aye.
Mr. Licio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert,
Yes.
Mr. Olney,
Yes,
and chair votes yes. Okay. Approved, Mr. Collins.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Mr. Gilbert and the board a question, since Mr. Gilbert actually looked through the plan? When we come back for your August 20th meeting requesting the driveway and curb cut, is there any additional information that we haven't already provided that we would need to get approval for that?
Well,
So,
you
on
should
the
contact the
application.
DPW. They have draft regulations for approving curb cuts. And I think it's pretty explicitly laid out in this draft regulation.
I think the application states what you need to provide.
Okay.
Correct, Helene?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tell him he's going to pick up the Mylar from you.
Oh, yes, Mr. Collins, the Mylar is available. I will sign it and it's available for pickup. I will email you my address, or Helene will email you my address, and you can come pick it up in town
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Next item, update on the LCD overlay district study. Sue, you asked me to, while you were on vacation, you asked me to add this, so I assume we have some additional information.
Yes, thank you. So I uploaded to SharePoint last week the updated plan in response to the questions and comments at the last meeting. And Chris Kuchel from MAPC, our consultant, is here to ask any questions. I know there are a couple of questions on process. I will note, and I'm sure Chris will discuss, there were a couple of things that weren't updated on the plan. Excise tax that's not readily available, and some other information. But hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the updated plan, and I think I'll just leave it up to Chris to answer any questions that folks might have. Does that work?
That sounds good, Sue. I'll throw it out to the board. Any questions, Ms. Foley? By the board, sorry.
Oh, yeah, how'd you know it was me?
Because
I
I
could
read your
ask some
email.
questions on the updated part, Chris.
Sure, I'll try to answer.
Okay, thanks. I was looking at the table that was added, the assessed value by use per scenario, and I wasn't able to calculate out how you went from the balanced growth to the low growth. So like, for example, for the balanced growth for the hotel, it was 150 rooms and the low growth was 80 rooms. So with the 150 rooms, it was an assessed value of 6.6 million. If I go and take 80 of the 150, that's a 0.53 factor. So if I take that 6.6 million times 0.53, I don't get 4.5 million. And I'm just wondering how those calculations were working.
Okay, I'm just gonna scroll to my spreadsheet here and just take a quick look at that.
So I get a 3.52 million for the low growth. So, and it kind of does that with all the others. So with the mixed use housing, the assisted living, I can't calculate out those numbers.
Okay, so for the hotel, we had it as a 34,000 square foot building, and it was based upon the square footage. And so that was the 34,000 square feet times the assessed value per square foot that we had.
Okay, so you were using square feet as opposed to units per se.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, great. And so if you, I guess, do that with the mixed use, it's looking like the average home value is 630,000. Is that correct?
Sorry, I'm just trying to. So for the mixed use, we have that didn't separate the housing portion from the commercial portion. It was just the mixed use building, and that came to $301 per square foot. So that was applied. That $300 was applied to both the commercial and the residential.
Are those figures, just so I don't want to take other people's time, are those figures in this document so that I know like it's 301 per square foot?
I thought I included that, but if not, yes. So that is included. It's on page 16 of it. So I have what the comparable was, and then I have the total assessed value, the building size, and then therefore the value per square foot. All
right, great. Then I wanted to ask, so there's a scenario for the life science building, which is life sciences building, which is 500,000 square feet, which equates to almost 11.5 acres if you're spreading it out. So I'm assuming you're doing like a 2-story building, but that's still, 6 acres. I don't know that that's really a true scenario that we would be looking at.
Yeah, and I think that the reason we had modeled this was because that was sort of, I guess, my understanding, and Sue could jump in, was that there was some potential interest of creating a building of that size potentially on this site. This was in no way intended to sort of endorse that, but it was to see, could it even fit? And so that's what part of this was. It was, like you had realized, probably it was a 2-story building. I think there was even one portion that might have been, I think part of it was 3 stories and then part was 2 stories. So it was condensed a little bit more than just 2 stories, since portions of the area was 3 stories. But yes, it does take up, when you include the parking, it takes up quite a bit of the district. What would be the district?
I mean, so obviously the board can decide, but it would be nice if we could bring it to an actual real life scenario so we could truly analyze the different factors with that. And then my only other comment would be that it's stated in here that the DPW trips and the playing field trips would be low and not relevant. And I do think they would be relevant. So if we could try to get numbers for those.
Yeah, well, so for the DPW trips, it's not in my mind that it's just irrelevant, but it wouldn't really be fair to add that because you already have a DPW. So these aren't new trips unless you're drastically expanding your DPW. These are trips that are already occurring in town. They're just being relocated to this area. So I would
Agreed.
not, I'm sorry.
Agreed. It's just a different, it's a higher traffic street that it would be relocated to. So I think that traffic angle needs to be looked at.
Okay. I will see, you know, this wasn't in the scope. I had someone who was able to pull these numbers. I don't have access to this. I will see if that person can pull numbers, if they even do it for DPW. They probably do. And I'll also, at the same time, ask about recreational trips. I honestly can't guarantee that we'll be able to get that, but I'll do my best. But I also do think, you know, again, with the recreational, I think the point that I made is one just to consider that when these trips occur, it matters. And so these trips are likely not occurring, for example, during your morning rush hour when you would have a lot of traffic otherwise. So it's sort of a different, it tends to be at different times, and it tends to not be every single day. You know, if you have these trips on a weekend when most sort of ball games are, that's different because that's not when the offices are open. But that being said, I'll see if I can track those numbers down.
Yeah, and if it's not in scope, that's totally fine. I just, from my viewpoint, it is important, but all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Chris. Any other comments, Sarah? Is your hand up or?
It is, yeah. My questions, and Chris, thank you for coming tonight or taking time tonight. With your permission, Ron, I'd like to ask Chris a couple questions that aren't related to his study, but maybe we can use his time tonight just to ask 2 quick questions. Is that okay?
Okay, go ahead.
The first is just to comment on the likelihood of those scenarios actually happening, particularly, and what planning board's role is in terms of helping to see those scenarios come through, just sort of briefly. And then I have a second question. So if you can.
Okay. I'll bear with you.
The second one is unrelated, so.
Okay, so you are asking what I think the likelihood of the scenarios and what the planning, what I think the planning board's role is in sort of shepherding that. Okay.
Correct.
Well, I guess I would say that the planning board's role is to help create sort of help implement the town's vision. So the town already created this vision or aspects and recommendations through your recently adopted master plan. I think one of the key areas for helping to implement the vision is helping to draft and help shepherd through zoning that is relevant, that helps create the vision. And I think that's sort of what I've been working with Sue on, and my meetings with you all has been towards that goal. I think that's kind of like the main role is to help implement what is the town's vision. It's not necessarily to implement your own vision, although of course we take very much into consideration, given your role, what your opinions are. And so we try to make those changes. I think the likelihood of these different scenarios, I think the life sciences scenario is really a sort of all of your eggs in one basket type of scenario. I've worked closely with my economic development colleagues, and we've done research, and we just don't think it is highly likely. I know that there has been some interest by one potential company, and I understand that could happen, but I just feel like if it doesn't happen, then you have nothing. And I think the likelihood of it happening is kind of low. I think Manchester is not the typical site where you would see a facility of this nature, given its location. I think that creating a mixed use sort of village-like scenario has a high degree of likelihood of implementation. I think what we've been trying to do is something that's a little bit more outside the box. So I think it would push developers maybe beyond what they are typically used to. So if you were, for example, in Avalon, you almost have sort of a kit of what you do in terms of the design and the mix of uses and whatnot. And I think we're pushing things not in a way that's unrealistic by any means, but it's just a little bit like I said, more outside the box than I think is typically done. And the reason we're doing that is because I think a lot of the standard suburban growth, even when it's done as sort of a quote unquote mixed use way, tends to not really create that neighborhood, that sense of place that really kind of, I think, is sort of the ideal. And so that's what we've been trying to do. That being said, I think it's highly implementable. I think it's not too great of a scale, at least in terms of implementation. I mean, it might be from your perspective in terms of what you think fits, but I think it is a realistic scenario.
Okay, so you're saying we create uses, we regulate them in a way that we want to see things happen, and we move that forward in that way.
Yes, with the caveat that I think it's best done when it's done in a more flexible manner. So you create like the range of uses and sort of maybe, let's say, the limit of development that you would allow, the number of units that you just can't, live more than that. But I think you really, in order to be implementable, needs to have some flexibility for a developer to sort of take into account just on-site conditions, financial feasibility, things like that. But yes, essentially, yes.
And then the second question is unrelated, but just use your professional expertise, which I assume is as a planner, which I am generalist a planner. But in your experience, if there was housing out there in 70 units, that has one access point that's 0.4 of a mile long, is that a problem for safety?
When you say a problem for safety, what would be?
Is that a best practice, or is there some best practice that would not allow, in general, single access of more than probably approaching a half mile by the time you get up in there?
No, not that I know of. I don't think there's any major concern. I mean, again, if you're talking about an ideal situation, you usually want, the ideal situation is more of like almost multiple access points, egress and whatnot. But I don't think there's any, I think it's actually not that uncommon to have a situation like this where you would have that type of single access point. So I would not consider that an overly concerned issue.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Chris? Gary? Sorry.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I still feel that the projections for tax revenue are kind of low. I talked a bit with, there's a lot at play with this. We don't know from the selectmen, they haven't given us indication if we might have a second tax rate if we have a substantial amount of commercial over a certain size, so that the downtown would be exempt. But also the projections just seem, well, it's complicated to figure out. Projections seem low. I also sort of feel that we could, over time, there will be a continued need, I think, for commercial. There's a lot of healthcare in the area. There's a lot of tenants that the Cummings property has that I think some of them might be quite happy to have Manchester by the Sea as their letterhead. I was told this by the president of Windover years ago, Lee Deliker. He made it clear. He said if that area was opened up for reasonable development, plenty of people would really take pride in putting their, a small portion of their office there, what have you. So I feel more optimistic about the over time. But again, this is the kind of thing where we allow, as you said, a range of uses, and we just see what developers propose. But we prepare ourselves by developing regulations for each of those uses, which is what land use regulations are. And we also developed some design guidelines that we're happy with, and you've already given us some good models for that. And I would caution you to use the word village. Let's start using the word neighborhood, because when nobody's wanting to create a separate village, it's going to be a rarefied neighborhood that we're going to try to fine tune so it's not a completely mixed use. It's going to be a partially mixed use, the way I see it anyhow. That it's going to we're going to tailor it to our needs. I think that's the direction we should go. But I want to ask you, having said all that, I want to ask you your take on something I asked the housing consultant we had, was can we effectively manipulate the market in terms of housing by developing design regs, land use regs, that sort of forces small apartments or small townhouse condos in order to get price points down, so we have something that approaches the missing middle, I call it, the small A affordable. Is that an effective tool that towns have used? Because I want to find some place to get hope where maybe we can do something besides market rate, or of capital A affordable, because those are two extremes that just drive me crazy.
Yeah. I think that the strategy that at least we've been going down the path of these cottages is I think hitting on what you're looking for, because these cottages, we can literally, and I can't recall off the top of my head what we have in the bylaw, but I think we actually capped what their size would be. So let's say it was 1,400. Now I will say, I know from the example in Concord that they're very popular, and these 1,500 square foot homes are still very expensive. However, when you're comparing it to the rest of Concord, they're actually not. I mean, when you still take that same price per square foot, instead of having a 3,500 square foot home, you have 1,500. And that's, so the term, that I hear is called naturally occurring affordable housing. And so it's naturally occurring because it's not deed restricted, it's market rate, but there are mechanisms to try and get it to be more affordable. And I think the best lever, again, I'm not a housing expert, I'd be interested to know what the housing consultant said, if they had an alternative take on this, but I think that the mechanism is to ensure that these are cottages, or whether it's part of a mixed use building, because again, when you're in a mixed use building, you're not having 3,000 square foot condos in there. They're going to be smaller. So again, somewhere usually 1,500 is pretty standard. So they're just naturally more affordable than other parts of Manchester.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chris, I had a question back on the life science scenario. Any special infrastructure needed for wastewater for a facility like that? I mean, is a septic system acceptable for lab waste, or should it be tied into a municipal system, or do you have any opinion on that?
This is something that I honestly don't know. My very, very limited understanding, which is probably not much more than anyone here, is that life sciences facilities that do types of like wet labs or whatnot have a lot of water issues. So I would think it would be a concern, but I don't know the answer to that. And I did ask internally around, and it wasn't something that we knew. But because it's something that we're not doing much work personally at MAPC on doing life sciences sort of zoning or development.
Okay.
So sorry, I can't give you a better answer.
All right, any other questions for Chris or Sue on the LCD study?
On my hands raised.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I guess the general consensus is we have a lot of potential housing developments going on. And so my question is, does this assumption base the residential to be apartments? Is there a program that we can make these for sale, not actually for rent? Is that?
Yeah, my understanding is that you cannot require, at least in the zoning, something to be for sale versus for rent, and it's because of federal fair housing rules, and so we can't dictate that, and I don't know any mechanism that can sort of try and persuade that to be condos.
Okay, thanks. And then my second question, I think when the life science person came to the planning board, they were appealing to us to go up to reduce the footprint. So was that considered in this scenario?
In this scenario, I considered up to 3 stories.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you were expecting more than that.
So I think they were saying, yeah, maybe 3, even 4, to reduce the footprint in these environmentally sensitive areas. So.
Yeah. And so just from, again, from the simple diagrams that I put together, I think you could probably use your imagination that some portion of that would be a little bit smaller. And I think that would be reasonable to think.
Final question. And I know in our bylaws that we're discussing right now, we have a rate of growth. So is there something that we can maybe long-term go ahead with some of the housing, but maybe if the 40B and some of the other developments go through faster than we think, put a limit on? I mean, obviously, but what does that look like? Does that make sense? Really a rate of development. If things come to fruition before this potentially happens, is there somewhere that we can maybe pull back? Is that?
Yeah, one of the strategies that we were considering back when we were considering this as a 40R district, and that was including the area where the proposed 40B was located, was included as part of that district, was that there would be a total limit within this area on a cap on the total number of units, so that if you hit that cap, whether it was part of the 40B development or whether it was spread throughout the district, you couldn't go beyond that. So
Okay.
I think, within the district, you could still do that type of strategy.
Okay. What does that look like, just so I would know for the future?
Well, as part of the 40R, we did it very simply and very explicitly of saying what the units were. I think that one way to do it would be if it's, let's say, by right up to, I'm just making the number up, by right up to 150 units. At that point, it's either prohibited, or you could say at that point it's through a special permit, and then you could put some criteria for what that special, what would allow for us to go beyond that 150 units.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ron? Yeah,
Okay, Sue.
add something. Yeah, I just wanted to add, I've also seen other communities that are doing overlay districts where they've required a certain amount of other mix of uses. So you could have a certain number of housing units and then no more until some other uses have been brought in. If you want to try to keep it a true mixed use, that's a tool or a strategy that could be considered as well.
Thanks, Sue. All right. I think we've, any other questions? I would like to move on since, thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Really appreciated. And thanks, Sue.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chris.
Sue, you're up again. Draft open space and recreation plan letter. What are we doing here?
So at the last meeting, we discussed that the open space and recreation plan is at DCS for preliminary approval. If they come back with some recommendations, we'll make those changes and consider any other changes that have been requested by the town. And then that'll be ready to move forward for final approval. When it goes into DCS for final approval, it needs to go in with a letter of support from both the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board. So I was asked to draft a document for consideration. So that's what was that's what I updated to SharePoint. And I don't object to anyone making changes in the wording or tone or whatever. It's just a draft for you to consider.
Okay. Has anyone have any comments on the draft? I don't know if everyone's read it, but go ahead, Mary.
Thanks, Ron. I would suggest adding planning board specific things that we liked about it or supported. Whether it's our looking at land protection or the recreational playing fields or whatever we decide as a board to do, but I think it would be nice to personalize it as the planning board. And with that, I mean, it's a long document. I think the actual document is maybe 120 pages, and then it goes up to 414 pages with all the additional stuff back there. But if somebody, or maybe Sue could even just give the highlights of what are the changes from the 2014 open space and rec plan to now. I mean, I think it's the same goals, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's very consistent with the previous one. I'm happy to pull out a few planning board specific items that we would be tasked with either leading or being, most of them that we're not the leads on, but we're certainly supportive of many. I'm happy to pull a couple of those out and add it to the text.
Yeah, and maybe even the, hoping that the planning board can work with the open space and rec committee to achieve some of these goals.
Okay. Sue, would you be willing to add those things? Do you need a vote of endorsement from the board tonight on this?
No, we have time to, it can be manipulated. I'm happy
May I
to,
suggest that you and
those
Mary
changes.
work on this a little bit, or is that,
I'm happy to make those changes.
okay?
Send it back out.
Why don't we do that? Is that acceptable to the board? That Sue will make another revision. We'll set it up for our next meeting with Mary's comments incorporated.
Sounds good to
Okay.
me.
All right, thank you. Okay, now the big thing here, the recodification roadmap committee has met and has given us a Sunday late night document. But thank you again for doing this, and I will give an explanation, have Chris and Sarah explain how far they've gotten in the past 2 weeks. Sarah or Chris?
Yeah. So we gave you 4 documents, one which we updated. The first, I think, is a map that showed in broad terms where each section of the current zoning ends up in the new renumbered, reordered plan. The second is a table that summarizes the allowed uses from section 4, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. That we'll talk about in a few minutes. And the third, if I can share my screen, Ron, is sort of continuation of our proposed, but perhaps not yet entirely agreed, strategy to break the zoning changes into articles that we talked about last time, that for town meeting, that are bite-sized chunks, for lack of a better description. So there were 2 versions to that, and I apologize that we didn't get you the right one, but the current one is the one that has more detail. So I just made it bigger so that anybody watching, Laura or anybody else, could sort of follow along. We're not really ready to get into the weeds on all of it, but the idea is to renumber things, fix a few basic things. By taking bite-sized chunks, as we talked about last time, we can limit discussions on things we don't want to open up. So for example, I'm pretty sure we need to talk to Alan Wilson about this for sure, but if you renumber a section and simply limit the warrant to the renumbering, the substance of that portion of the zoning cannot be modified, because voters would not have been given due notice that the changing the setbacks or the provisions in the zoning would be on town meeting floor. The idea too is to create something that could be followed by people who haven't been following it as closely as all of you and me knew recently, by giving them the new table of contents as a handout. And each article would be able to be standalone, and as we've talked about, could be described with a purpose, and be kind of just, framed up. And then subsequently, then the outcome of November would be a framework for some substantive changes in April. I think we anticipate that we can take up some substantive changes as well in November. The other thing is there are provisions that need only a 50% vote, those that deal with housing density. So where those don't require 2/3, we can break those apart at this meeting, or set it up so that they can be easily addressed legally in the spring. So as we thought through this, we realize that we're going to miss opportunities to do some of the nuanced wording changes, because our proposal is that we don't take up all of the sections in their entirety in the new version. But we could take those changes up then in the new reordered zoning. And, you know, no matter what we do, it's going to be confusing. So then what we proposed, and we in this version labeled these things articles A, B, C, because we realized if we use numbers, then the numbers were confusing because the sections of the zoning have numbers. So for the purposes of our discussion, that's why we used letters. Oh, I should also say, we took the sort of consensus. It seemed that this was consistent with that consensus document that we tried last time, which is available for everybody to look on the SharePoint. So if we just sort of, anything to add just on the preamble, Chris?
Just a couple of statements. The first is, one way about doing this would be just to delete the old zoning bylaw and replace it with a new one. That would be pretty simple. But my guess is, well, there are two problems. First, I don't think we have enough time to actually prepare the second bylaw yet. And we'd like to get some of it done, so this would be kind of a head start. The second thing is, my guess is that if we go to town meeting and ask for a whole new zoning bylaw, there's going to be all kinds of trouble because no one's going to understand it. And we're opening up the whole can of worms at once. So the question is, what worms can we pick out of the can to fiddle with, and which ones should we leave in the can? And, you know, that's something we need to talk about. The other part is trying to get all this done for November, assuming there is a town meeting in November, is going to be an enormous undertaking for us. And so maybe we should just pick off the things we can do and save the harder things for later. And one other point, which is one of the big problems with this, was taking definitions out of section 2 and moving it to the end. From a numbering point of view, it just changes all the other sections, and it causes a lot of people a lot of brain problem trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. So if we just leave section 2 there, it makes it much easier and much more understandable as to, you know, we're just changing a few things in section 3, and we're changing a few things in section 6, and we're adding some more sections at the end, probably, and that's fine. It doesn't renumber 4, 5, and 6 to get there. So that's kind of the mindset we came to this with, and I don't know whether the rest, everyone else agrees or disagrees.
I guess we're prioritizing the renumbering. That's one of the things that would result, is that one of the outcomes is that there would be the renumbering would be accomplished in large measure. Because to do renumbering and all of the substantive changes seems to be when you look at the map that Chris put together of what moves where, it's that in and of itself is confusing. So let's just walk through what we we don't have to take these up, but just to give you a sense that that sections 1 and 2, 1 would be just replaced. Section 2 could either be the definitions, or we could have I don't think it matters, a new section 12, which is definition, and just let section 2 remain intentionally blank. So Chris just described leaving it definitions there. And that means we don't have to renumber section 3 or section 4 or section 3 has a lot of things that can just be replaced in its entirety. We kind of look through what made sense. Section 4 has the table, which predominantly is 1 through 6, and we can talk about that. And then we start creating these new sections. Section 9, which is where we take, make special districts. Section We could address the junk cars, moving those to a general bylaw as another discrete article, and create a section 11, which is the administration in its entirety, create new sections, special regulations, and create an energy regulation section, and then also delete the stuff that's obsolete or illegal. So that would be, you know, whatever those section numbers are in the current version. And so that's basically, the other thing is if we wanted to, the big thing that we haven't yet sort of tackled is what about section 6, which is the meat of the matter, right? And some of that, since it doesn't renumber, could be amended, which is one advantage of this approach, especially with the definitions either staying in section 2 or section 12. And we could take up accessory dwelling units, the like as I mentioned, the junk cars, the driveways, if we want, but they could be standalone articles for town meeting. So, and the idea is that we would try to have them be either so obviously, you know, procedural, or could stand on their own. So if there was a vote against one of the articles, it would not cause a problem with the other articles. They would not be interdependent. So the thought we had was to actually take this general outline and take the existing bylaw and do it with track changes and see if it makes sense. Does this get us renumbered, roughly where are the holes and how do we fix those? Also finalizing the definitions, because if we're going to replace them in their entirety, we might as well have them correct. And sections 1 through 4 are pretty cut and pasted, so we thought with any check changes there. And then also getting clarity on any of the changes that only require a 50% vote rather than a 2/3. And then I didn't put it here, but identify the, you know, if we want to include ADU, any, you know, the discrete improvements on specific issues, ADU or junk cars or driveways. Flood control came up as a high voting, as one which many of us thought was a priority. I think everybody thought was a priority in the priority ranking. So I'll stop there to just discuss for a moment, and then we should talk about the table.
Is there any reason why definitions are at the end? I'm wondering why you put them at the end. And you know, is that?
That's what Mark did. I think they could be in section 2 or at the end, either way. But whatever it is, as long as if we take this approach, it's just so we don't have to renumber every single section that follows. Is the point.
You would include the new definitions, yes, in section 2.
Yep, take the new definition, take out the old definitions and insert the new ones.
Well,
Ron, this is Christine. I think we just had a conversation about that. I mean, it wasn't like we took a straw poll one day in the beginning where we wanted it. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I think it's whatever makes it easiest at this point, I think is what we do.
So when we put the new language in for some of these, I think we need to explain why we're doing that and what's changed. You know, so there's some work there.
One of the good things about doing it this way is that you can do a track changes thing for each section independently, and for the changes that we want to do, and it's much easier to understand instead of looking at the whole thing.
You can also group.
But you know, that just gets the word changes. Shouldn't there be a little narrative as to why?
Yes, there should be something that says why are we proposing this?
Right. So that's a lot of work.
But we're gonna have to do that work. We're gonna have to explain those anyway. So I think it's easier for each of us to take one of these proposed articles and say, I propose Article 7 to delete the following sections because they're illegal. Or I want to, this section simply renumbers things in order to have the zoning bylaw comply with the table of contents that was handed out to you in the meeting.
Yeah,
And-
or junk cars, we want to put that in general bylaw because otherwise you only have to get rid of a junk car if you trying to get a building permit. And that doesn't make any sense, so.
Right, so each of these things can be addressed and explained discreetly, discussed by the meeting as a discrete issue. So we're not talking about jump cars at the same time we're talking about swimming pools, at the same time we're talking about driveways. Because if those,
Weigh in
yes.
on- I have another meeting I have to go to, but I'm a little surprised that between the past meeting where we talked about the same subjects pretty much, and this meeting, that this hasn't been ironed out methodically with Alan Wilson. Now, maybe he's not the only person to talk to about it, but I'm just gonna use him. Maybe it's him and Greg or something, him and town council. The time and money is worth it. But I thought some of what you're talking about is kind of hypothetical as to how the process could work. Why don't you just iron it out so we know how it literally can work?
Well, we wanted to get board consensus on this approach. And then I actually thought that maybe we would go to Alan and maybe bring Sarah or Chris, and we would do that.
I think that's the appropriate next step. I think we asked Alan previously how, if he would and even entertain having, wasn't there a discussion of like having the full zoning bylaws, and he was, you met with him, Ron, not I, but he was kind of lukewarm on that.
Right.
So.
But as I understand it now, the approach is we've got, X number of sections in our bylaw. We're going to have more sections in the new one. We're going to renumber and take all our existing language and put it into the new bylaw. Well, we've got new language we're going to put in the new bylaw, but the fallback is if a couple of those new sections don't pass, we theoretically should be able to keep the old language, but just have it live in a new place in the new bylaw.
Exactly.
The structure on that is clear to me. It's kind of simple, and we also do need a narrative. And I told you before on a phone call that I was willing to help out to try to trade each of these changes. But if that flies with Alan, can't we get his blessing on that approach?
Yeah, we will. Now that we've vetted it and the board's in agreement on this approach, we will do that.
Can I also suggest that I know some of you have worked hard on specific issues, like I keep saying swimming pools and driveways and junk cars, that you pick one of those things, I know Gary ADUs, and begin to think of it as a discrete bylaw. So, so junk cars, you've all been to town meeting, you pull out a warrant and say junk cars to, amend the general bylaws section, whatever that's going to be, and begin to think about those things. And that's a good way for everybody to pick, some of these issues that we want to advance beyond just the procedural and the renumbering and figuring out with Alan Wilson, because that is a lot. So I invite everybody to pick their favorite issue and write a discrete bylaw, about where it goes in general bylaws or which things are illegal, and really that's the work now that we have to get specific language. How do we advance this at town meeting? Because absent specific language at town meeting, we got nothing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and one of the things we have to do pretty quickly is finalize the use table that we
Yeah,
all
so we
have
want-
been working on.
Yeah.
I can pull that up too. So our thought, Chris, you want to just talk about what our thought is on timing on that? I'll pull it up.
So the thought is to put it up on our website right now so people can use it as a guide, because they're not really changing anything in the narrative. We're just replacing the narrative with this table. It makes it easier to understand. So
I'm looking for it, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up.
where did it go?
And there are some changes because there are some things that just had been left unsaid. So there are some changes to it, but they're minimal.
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
basically replacing.
Yes, yeah. So
Sorry.
for example, is one of the things is senior housing. Well, we're not going to probably propose to change the bylaw to allow senior housing, so it won't be in the table for now.
But there are things like, you know, all the agricultural uses and the different classifications of those.
Yes,
That will be
exactly.
new and probably a little confusing to folks, but there are those type of things.
Yep, exactly.
So our thought was that in that case, if we could kind of try to get a handle on that, at the next meeting, that's something that we could kind of, we could get some closure on. So that was the thought.
Yeah, and one of the things I proposed is having a little guide to the table so that you know what BA stands for, it's Board of Appeals, and maybe something for each of the residential districts to give you a clue that the residence E district is 2 acres and whatever, you know, just so that.
Yeah, maybe fill those out, you know, actually give a description up there. I hear you.
Yeah. So the idea is make the table be something
More
that
friendly.
if you see it on the website, it can help you quickly understand the uses in you for your property. Because right now, if you're not familiar with this stuff, and then the yellow, I believe, are the new sections.
Yeah.
Christina, you have your hand up.
Oh, Ron, I have a question. So just for Sarah and Chris, could you clarify? I think you said there's 4 documents. I only see 2 or 3. There's possible articles, the summary of our surveys. Then there's a possible articles that's dated yesterday.
Oh,
So what's
we'll
the
resend
map
them.
exactly?
We'll
I just want to make sure I'm on the same
Okay.
page.
Yeah, we'll resend them. They're in one email. How's that sound? And maybe we can actually, let me suggest that.
Look, I see possible articles, but this is like,
Can I just suggest that we make a dated folder under zoning changes on the SharePoint drive for these files, and then we will email you when they have been posted there. So so there are we worked on 3 documents this week. This table, a map of which Chris had already done, a map of what section goes to what new section, and then that proposed list of draft start for what articles would look
okay.
like. So
What is the map? What is the map titled? Thank you.
I can just, hold on, I'll just pull it up.
I think it's approximate mapping of current zoning to proposed zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
7/20/21 version.
Yeah. This is.
Is it in today's folder or is it in the recodification folder? I'm sorry, I was looking, I just don't see it.
I'm not sure where it is. We will
Okay.
make sure that it gets put in the zoning changes folder, but this is what it looks like.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good.
This isn't the right version. Anyway, this is what it looks like. So it says what, so 4.1 goes to section 4. This is, we had, this is a new definition there. This isn't the right version, but so you can see we've identified various things and things that get deleted. Section 7 becomes section 11 and so forth. So that is a map and is an approximate. So hopefully
Great, thanks.
we'll get those latest versions. We have a lot of versions. I'll try to use detailed tables, but I think that certainly I think Chris and I are very open to a different approach if somebody has one, but this is what we've thought through it for several hours, more than several.
No, at first glance, it looks great. I don't think I've seen it. So I was just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
So in August, I think it would be useful to get feedback from Alan, as Gary suggested, and to be prepared to go through that use table. And also, if we could be prepared to sort of signal our intent on sections, at least the definitions, section 1 and section 3, which are pretty straightforward.
I think we're fine with doing what you suggested, keeping it
Yeah.
in 2, if that's what you're asking. I don't.
No,
think the
but what
board has
any new definitions that, we would just take the definitions from version 8 and plop them in section 2. So if there's any
Right.
changes, and then we would eventually have to, of course, hold a public hearing, but at least between now and a public hearing, we don't have to really do much. If we have sort of gotten consensus that that's the case, we could put them on the website and say, here are some proposed articles that we're planning to do, and people can read them through in their leisure, at their leisure.
This is Mary. Can I ask one
Mary.
question?
Yes, Mary.
Thanks, Sarah and Chris. This is awesome. Trying to consolidate all this. Just a question when you were talking about definitions. So definitions in draft 8 was inclusive of everything that had been discussed. So to the point that, there's probably definitions that would be senior housing that we're not going to propose yet, or other items we're not going to propose. Is there any issue with, and I'm sure, I don't think there is, but adding definitions that aren't actually in the bylaw documents yet?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We don't think there is, but that's something we can get some opinion on.
Okay. But thank you again.
Yeah, just simply to that end, the definitions need to be numbered so that they can be amended in the future. But that's easy.
All right, Laura, welcome. I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Sorry, that was an error if I did. I apologize. I'm
Okay.
just listening.
All right, sorry. All right. All right, yeah, I think the next steps, I think we're kind of in agreement on your proposed format. And I think like to move that to Alan, maybe Sarah, you and I, and can discuss with Alan. I can set up a meeting in the next week or so.
Chris and Sue and I maybe can figure out how to test this out. There's a couple of other legal things that we identified as, if you move section 4.2, how does it to 9.2? How do all the subsections get renumbered? That's, for example, and all the references, the cross references. So that's the thing that we'll figure out among the things. But I think those are solvable problems, but need solutions for the bylaw to not be a complete mess when we get done.
All right. Anything else on this topic?
So can I just close out? If we will make sure that people have the definitions, the sections 1, 2, and 3, and this use table, and hopefully we can get kind of our intent on those. Also, if people for September can think about, besides this reordering and the administrative stuff, what are the issues we should take up?
Curb cuts.
Then we'll have to figure out how to do that. If we can. Some of them might be much harder than you think, just because. So we'll talk through that with Alan, because I have some questions for him on that.
Ron, might I?
Yes.
I just wanted to make, other than putting the definitions in a section, each definition does not have a subsection to it. So they're typically just in alphabetical order. So you don't actually need to number each definition. So if you look at the section that Mark did, section 12, you'll notice that each one does not have a separate number.
But think about trying to amend this in 5 years. And you want to amend, it would be so much easier to amend.
I think what would be very difficult to add numbers, because if they're alphabetical
Okay.
and
whatever. It's-
now we're numbered, then I think in the future, you would have a hard time sliding something in. I think that's why they're not numbered. So I don't think we need
Whatever, we can
numbers.
ask, that's a question that somebody's done it more than we have, Ken.
Yeah,
I think we want to make this as amendable in the future, whatever we can do to facilitate the ease of this in the future.
yeah, agreed.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for doing that. Helene was able to get the minutes in, Saturday, Helene, and I've gone through them, didn't have any questions. Did everyone get a chance to look at them, and any comments on them? I know they came in late.
Ron, I'm sorry, but I only got them in this afternoon.
I'm sorry, this afternoon.
I just had one small thing,
Okay.
very small. Under acknowledgement of correspondence after email chain from William Cross, I think you wanted to do et al, ETAL, not ATAL. That's a big one.
Acknowledgement of, oh my goodness, good for you. And, yep,
That's it.
Anything else? Okay.
thank you.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 12th.
Is there a second as amended? Is there a second?
Second,
Roll
Mary.
call.
Yes.
Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
yes.
Mr. Olney,
Yes,
and chair votes yes. Gary has left us. Any subcommittee and liaison updates?
FinCom had a meeting on the 15th. They talked about the regionalized dispatch to Middleton, the fund balance account, compost site, and ongoing town projects, but nothing really planning board related.
Thank you, Ms. Foley.
Ron, this is Christine. I have a question for Chris about the Affordable Housing Trust, maybe, or Chris or Sue, just if it's appropriate right now. Could someone explain the one-to-one requirement? I might be off topic, or just point me to the right regulation that I can read about it, or just give me a little more information about that.
so my recollection is that the state had a demonstration program to allow state housing authorities to redevelop their properties. And there would be some state funding available to help do that. However, there was a requirement in this program that there be a 1-for-1 match of new units for the old public housing units. Now, I'm not sure the program still exists actually, but that was what we used as a template for putting this together.
Okay.
So have you got anything else to add to that?
So what exactly was
no.
it called again? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what the technical name was of the state demonstration grant program. something
Yeah, I
like
would have to look it up. And basically it was a number that they wanted, they thought that amount of housing would be needed to subsidize the redevelopment. So it was a high number.
It was both high and arbitrary, but that's what it was.
But that's the number that we're going forward with, right? That's what the number at the presentation was, so.
That was the assumption.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, I wrote, there's a letter in your packet for Gary Russell that I would like to send out. If there's any objections to what was written or any comments, I would hear them now. Otherwise, I would assume that by acclamation that I can send it out.
yep.
Thank you.
Any other matters anyone wants to bring up?
Welcome, Laura.
Yes,
Welcome.
I
welcome.
was going to say.
Okay. So we're off for a month. Everyone enjoy the summer. And when we reconvene in August, late August, it will be at 6:30. We'll try to have a reorganization vote at that point with with Laura present. I wanted to talk also at that meeting, you know, we have our meetings at 6:30. That was mostly to accommodate Gary Russell because he was working. I just thought you wanted to make it later or earlier, we could discuss that at this time. So that's why I didn't put any times on the September meeting dates. So
And nothing about in-person meetings yet?
the last I heard from Greg is that the IT equipment should be in by August. So stay tuned. Our August meeting may be in person. I don't know, possibility.
Ron, do we want to talk about the retreat technically and a date?
Yeah, so I was going to bring this up at our next meeting. We are going to have a retreat probably in September. And there's some things that are going to happen before that. I was going to bring this up since we're all here. This Vandersdoop woman is going, I have her bio, and she's going to interview us, interview each member of the board. I'm not prepared to explain exactly what's going to happen, but I think she's going to talk to each of you individually, ask about 5 questions. She's going to compile all the information, and then at the retreat, she's going to come to our retreat and talk about, you know, board members' feelings, board members' you know, priorities, and how we can work together. So stay tuned for that. That will all happen at our retreat, and it'll probably be in early September.
I just thought maybe we should talk about some dates because, you know, a month from now, I think the world's going to be open and people's schedules are going to get a little crazy. So maybe
Well, yeah, the
start
dates will be depend on when she gets done with her. So I haven't picked a date. I'm thinking a Saturday morning is my feeling, but I don't know. I'll leave that up to the board.
I'm just saying, I probably have a lot of commitments already on Saturdays in September and October.
Okay,
So it just,
we'll figure out a date when the whole board is together, and whenever it is, if it's a, you know, Tuesday night or a Monday night or whatever, or whenever we can all get together, we'll figure out a date. But I do request that we have 100% attendance at this. So that will be. So it'll be important to set a date. Correct. I agree with you. So we'll think about. We'll come together and get a date when next meeting. I mean, if you have some dates in mind, you know, a day of the week that's better than another. You know, let's bring it to the table. Next meeting. Looking at the calendar here.
I think a doodle pool might be a good idea. Then.
Okay, yeah, I'm not.
Okay, I do share Christine's Saturday mornings are kind of precious.
Okay. So we'll do a doodle pool. Good idea.
Laura's got her hand up. Laura's got her hand up.
Yeah. Hi, Ron.
Go
Can
ahead.
you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
Laura.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to make mention of the fact of the next meeting date is when I'm away. So the planning board meeting. So I have vacation in August. Just wanted
No, you're already?
Oh, sorry. I'm not
Oh, I had a lot of plans
contract
for
yet.
that. Oh, geez.
So
maybe we
just a
will-
heads up.
Okay.
Unless the next meeting is on the 9th, when
Can we call Gar?
it's not too late. If you don't like it.
That's interesting. I don't know. We could move it to the 9th. I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm away
You're away, okay.
I'm away, yeah, the kind of week of the 16th and the 23rd, not available for a meeting those weeks.
Helene, are you
Um,
expecting any applications on those dates already?
Yes, we are expecting an application from Timothy Collins on his driveway for August 23rd. That's it.
Do we want to move it? Do we want to move it to the 9th? I don't
Can
know.
I suggest we do procedural matters on August 23rd and not do and keep it short, and then keep substantive matters for the next meeting, perhaps?
Okay.
That's a thought to keep, so we don't, if members of the public have plans that they want to submit, and if they submit them, we have to act on if they're ANRs within a certain amount of time, right? Somebody submits one.
Okay. Yeah.
The,
All right, so we'll have a short meeting on the 23rd, so we'll even have more of a break, but it's not a break. We should be working on that recodification stuff. So,
Okay.
all right, guys, thanks. Sorry it
Thank
went
you.
so long. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn is made and seconded. Ms. Creighton?
Yes.
Ms. Delicio?
She says yes.
Okay, Ms.
Oh,
Foley?
I'm sorry. I didn't know you were waiting for me. Yes, sure.
Ms. Foley?
Yes.
And Mr. Olney?
Yes.
And the chair says yes. Okay, have a good summer.
Thanks,
Thank
Ron, you
you.
too.
See you.
Bye all. Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.